Hey, what I'm going to do for you is this is interesting. It's an important part, and I realize I'm jumping. We're in Luke. I'm going to try to go back and give you some context here. This Jesus, who we as a church say is the one who changed our lives. We've been watching his journey literally from, if you go to Luke, the story of his conception, and we've been watching this journey, and Luke does this amazing job. He does something very significant, which is something that happens at what they call the transfiguration. I know it's a big word, but what that means is that Jesus is in the presence of two guys, Moses and Elijah. And by the way, if you're a guy and you want to look at the life of Elijah, we're doing that on Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m. Talk to me. I'd love to talk with you about that. Jerry Lovejoy is doing an amazing job with that. But he's talking with these two, and they say to him, it's time. That's basically what they say to him. It is time for you to go to Jerusalem. Because at Jerusalem is where all this is going to culminate. And it says in Scripture, Jesus set his face towards Jerusalem. And since then, we've been watching him make his way south from the area of Galilee, making his way south. And we ended up last week in this town of Jericho. And then in the town of Jericho, we looked at a couple things. There was a healing of a blind man. There was a story of Zacchaeus. And then last week, we talked about this parable that he said. So what's about to happen is this is the culmination. He is coming into Jerusalem, and listen, he will not leave Jerusalem, okay, until the crucifixion takes place. And when we say Jerusalem, this area, and I'll even show you a map on that. So I want you to have, if you have your Bibles, to Luke chapter 19, verse 28. It says, when he had said these things, he went on ahead going up to Jerusalem. And I've showed you what it means by going up because Jericho is literally so down low. It's the lowest city on the face of the earth. And he literally makes this 3,000 feet climb. Takes about 23 miles to get into Jerusalem to begin what has been called the triumphal entry. Let's stop right there. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. How many of you ever had someone throw you a surprise party? You've ever had a surprise party? But to have you have a surprise party, what they did was they made you think like everyone had forgot your birthday. You ever had that experience, right? So the concept is that you get up and you think there's going to be, I don't know, muffins or something, and there's nothing. And you think someone's going to say happy birthday, and there's nothing, right? And so almost every door you walk into, you're hoping like, oh, no one. You ever had, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, that feeling of where's the party? And then hopefully, if everything goes well, you will forgive everybody that night when the big surprise happens, right, whenever it's supposed to happen. But if you've ever had that thing like, man, everyone just forgot. Everyone forgot my birthday. Nobody cares. That feeling of just like, what's going on? I want you to grasp that because that's going to be significant in a minute. Have that feeling. So he's going up to Jerusalem, and it says in verse 29, when he drew near to Bethpage and Bethany at the mount that is called Olivet, or the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples. We'll get to those guys in a minute. So interesting, I'm going to show you a little map here. This is a picture. Basically, the brown is what is considered the old city of Jerusalem. And it was amazing to walk through the old city of Jerusalem and the old walls. And obviously, they've been reconfigured a little bit over time, but that pretty much is the old. And then the temple area, think about how much of the temple takes up how much of the city. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a huge place. And by the way, dominant in every way. Across this thing called the Kidron Valley is what we call the Mount of Olives, and at the very bottom of that is the Garden of Gethsemane. And by the way, it is crazy to be on the Mount of Olives. It is crazy to know this is where Jesus goes and has that wrestling with God in the Garden of Gethsemane. But they take you on the tour, they take you up on this thing of the Mount of Olives, and they tell you, you're looking at the temple because you're looking really across the valley. You can see it. You almost feel like if you had a good arm, you might be able to throw a baseball and hit it, right? I mean, that's how close it feels. It's not like it's a mountain range far away. It's literally, and by the way, you have to understand something. They call things mountains that we call rolling hills here. Does that make sense? So it sounds better to give it the word mount, but I'm just telling you, it's just like it's a good rolling hill. And you're on this place, and then what they believe is behind you is Bethany. Now, why is that significant? Well, Bethany is going to be, as you're going to find out, this is where Lazarus lives. This is where Mary Magdalene would be. This is where Mary and Martha, that whole thing takes place is in Bethany. And so it's just outside of what they call Jerusalem proper. So what has happened is they believe that he has made the journey from Jericho. He's in Bethany, right? And he is going to be going through Bethpage because at Bethpage is where he's going to pick up the colt. We'll get there in just a second. So the thing is, again, he is setting his face towards coming into Jerusalem. So let's watch what happens here. So let's go back. It says he sent 2 of the disciples. He goes, look, you're going to go into Bethpage, and look what happens. Saying, go into the village in front of you, where on entering you will find a colt tied on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it here. Now, here's what's interesting as we begin this process. Jesus has complete control of the situation. He tells the disciples, look, you're just going to go into the city. You're going to find a colt that has never been ridden. All of this, by the way, is very symbolic. It's going to be there. You're just going to walk up to it and untie it. Now, let me just tell you this. It's like me telling you, look, you're just going to go over to Mallory. You're going to find a car with keys in it. Just get in and drive away. No big deal, right? I mean, think about it. The colt belongs to someone. Does that make sense? And hey, you too, just go in, find it, grab it, untie it. Now, they, like you and I, have this question. If anyone asks you, before you even ask, why are you untying it? You shall say this, the Lord has need of it. Well, good. I want you to, okay, go to Mallory, find a card. If someone asks you what you're doing, just say, oh, Jeff needs it, right? Okay, glad Jeff needs it. But obviously there's something, when he says the Lord, there's going to be a connection, and they would probably went farther than that. But it's interesting that in this situation, and here's why. Follow me. No one has prepared his party. No one has prepared his party. Jesus, the Lord of Lords, is coming into Jerusalem. Scripture says there is supposed to be this amazing celebration, and no one is prepared for it. So it's interesting. It's like you ladies that tell your husbands, look, I'll buy my gift, I'll wrap my gift, right? Because I actually want to get what I want to get, right? Not have to take back whatever you give me. So it's just easier if I just buy it, wrap it, right? And then act shocked in front of the kids. It's just easier. So the concept is he's already set this up. He goes, look, you're going to go into this town. You're going to find this colt. And if someone asks you why you're intent, just say the Lord needs it. He is setting it up because guess what? The people of Jerusalem are not looking for him. They're not prepared for him, and they're not waiting for him. So he has taken all of this into his own hands. So those who were sent went away and found it just as he had told them. So they're like, well, pretty cool, right? I mean, they walk in, they find this colt tied to this post. No one has ever ridden it. And pretty much exactly. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, why are you untying the colt? I love that moment. Because again, it's that moment of like, hey, what are you doing? And this is their answer. And they said to them, the Lord has need of it. Well, okay. So in this, it is believed that Jesus has even prepared, and by the way, even prepared the hearts of the people who own the colt. Because what's going to happen is, guys, is that in the next few minutes, Jesus is going to begin this process that if no one else is going to do it, he's going to do it. And he is going to have a triumphal entry, which I'm about to tell you, I think is actually not labeled right. It is triumphal because of him, but it is sad that the Messiah has come, and honestly, the people of Israel don't even notice. And if you don't think that I'm going to apply this to us later, you'd be wrong. And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they sat Jesus on it. And by the way, this is all imagery. This is all of this idea. By the way, there's a king called Jehu. This is what they do when he is established as king. They find a colt that never been ridden. They throw the garments on that colt, and they bring him in. And so there's all this symbolism of this king that is coming in. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. Now, who's doing this? I want you to know that I love, I'm willing to admit it, I want you to know I love when God's word surprises me and I grow from it. If you would have come to me a year ago today, I would have preached this sermon with this idea that Jerusalem came out and there was this triumphal entry, that Jerusalem is waiting for their king. And I can tell you, either I was preached to it as a young boy or that's how I read scripture. And as I read through it this last year, God showed me, no, that is not what takes place. The people that are putting their cloaks on the animal and laying their garments before him, and yes, other scriptures say palm branches laid before him, are the group of his disciples that are traveling with him. They see this thing happening and goes, man, this should be bigger. So in some ways, they are doing this thing and they are doing it, but it's not what it's supposed to be. Does that make sense? It's not this grand thing it's supposed to be, but they're doing the best they can with what they have. They're doing the best they can with what they have. And so in this process, they start going, oh, and they're laying their cloaks down, they're laying their jackets down as he walks by. Let me show you a passage in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. Rejoicing greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. But look at the language. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Who are we talking about? We're talking Jerusalem. There should be, as he comes in on this colt, there should be this incredible rejoicing. And as he comes in, the disciples don't see the rejoicing. It's not happening. Jerusalem is going on like it's any other day. People are doing their business, they're living their lives, and the Messiah is riding in. It's talked about over and over again in different passages. And so what they do is they go, well, if no one else, then us. If no one else, then us. And they start laying down their cloaks, and they start rejoicing, and they start saying, because Jesus coming in humble on this colt. And they get an essence of what this should be, but it's not what it's supposed to be. And as he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of who? His what? Disciples. Now, it's good that he has a multitude. Someone believed at this point, with the people that he's gained on this process, he probably has 150, maybe 200 people that are traveling with him at this time. So they're doing this. But what's sad about this is that they lay down their cloak, and as he runs by, they pick up their cloak and they run ahead and they lay it down again. There's not a stream of cloaks to the temple. It is literally this group of people that are just making this up as they go. And as he's drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, a whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works they had seen. Him coming into Jerusalem should be celebrated for what he's done, those he's healed, those he's blessed, those he's taught, those who have traveled with him. In that entourage are those who were blind and now see. Into that entourage are those who are deaf and now hear. Into that entourage are those who, by the way, are on new legs. And they're praising his name. And they're causing this commotion. And I will tell you, one of the saddest scriptures you will read is Matthew 21:10. And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, "Who is this?" 200 people are causing this interaction. They're just kind of going through it, and the crowd's like, what's going on? Now, by the way, I don't want to say like no one would have known of Jesus. I mean, Jesus has been traveling for 3 years. The miracles have gone far and wide. We know that people know about this, but they're just trying to figure out, what is this all about? He's on this donkey. He's coming through. He's humble. And the crowd's just kind of, they're just kind of sticking up like, what's going on? Who is this? Why is this happening? And it's so sad because the coronation that should happen. By the way, how many of you guys have watched like royal weddings, right? I mean, people stop and line the streets and people get up and they watch like, oh, what's she going to wear? And, all this kind of stuff. That's honestly pretty much all we have is to watch what happens in England when something of that magnitude happens in the royal family. When everybody comes by to wave at the carriage as it comes by, as everyone comes by and cheers as the new prince or the new princess leaves the cathedral. That's all we have. And what we have is this really ragtag group of people that are basically creating this moment. And this crowd of two of his disciples saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." You're going to find out in a minute, there's already going to be people that are going to try to stop this. But here's the reason why. You don't say that. That is reserved. That is reserved for the Messiah, listen, who's going to come and in his power, probably not on a donkey, on a white steed, is going to roll into town, is going to take care of Rome, is going to reestablish Jerusalem, and we're going to have a king again. But we are not looking for a guy coming humbly on a donkey riding through the village, because that's not the king we want. We want to hear about a king that says, look, I'm coming, and when I come, I'm coming in power, and we're going to take out Rome, and I'm going to sit on the throne of my father David, and we're going to reign again. And then here comes this carpenter from Nazareth who's been doing these things and has been doing miracles and has been in battle with the Pharisees this whole time. And yet as he comes in, this crowd goes, no, you don't look like I want you to look. I want to see regiments behind you with arms ready to take on Rome. And a bunch of fishermen, and listen to me, because this entourage is made up of fishermen, tax collectors, and prostitutes. Are you with me? And common people that were touched by him, who were healed by him. This is not the powerful entry that they were wanting because they were looking in the wrong place. The phrase that they're shouting comes from Psalm 118, verse 26. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. That phrase will become important in just a minute. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. Now watch. He's traveling in. Donkey speed. I don't know what donkey speed is. But he's just traveling in. And some of the Pharisees and the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." So the Pharisees in the crowd start yelling at him, "Make him stop. Make him stop." And the reason why they're saying this is because, again, he does not fulfill their preconceived ideas of who Jesus is supposed to be. For some reason, this theme has come up not only so many times in the book of Luke, but has come up in the history of our church. The difficulty we have is that somewhere in our minds, all of you, you got a picture of who Jesus was. Either he's a form of Santa Claus, or he's just a good teacher, or he's someone you go to when you're in trouble. He's the vending machine where you put in your prayer and you pull the handle and out comes the answer. He's there when everything goes bad, but you really don't need him at any other time. You have this vision of Jesus. And the problem with that is that Jesus has a whole vision of himself, of this one that would come, meek and mild, born of a virgin, that would come in, understand what it was like to be us, to be one of us, to have friends that would betray him, to have a family that thought he was crazy. So he could say, I know what it's like to walk in your shoes. and yet I will die for you to give you life. And because he doesn't fit what you think that Jesus is, a lot of the times what we don't do is we don't submit to him fully. And so because Jesus isn't fitting this, they say rebuke him. You're not supposed to say that because you're not the one that we're looking for. If you were the one we were looking for, this is what the Pharisees are saying, you be a lot more like me. You get that? The Pharisees wanted him to be the one that was so righteous and doing everything, and again, that they take 10% of their dill. Think about that. They took 10% of their dill. I don't even know if you like dill. But if I got a crop of it, 10% they would offer that because they were going to be so precise. They definitely would not be touching them prostitutes and tax collectors. They definitely wouldn't have gone to Zacchaeus' house. And so therefore, because he doesn't look like they want, they're like, no, you don't get to come on a donkey like this. You don't get this entry. You tell your disciples to shut it. I love this response. He answered, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. Isn't it? Listen, I know that's a very powerful passage, but I also feel it's a gut check for me. He's saying, look, this little group of 200 people that are doing their absolute best to give me the entry that isn't even suitable for me, but they're doing their best. He goes, listen, if they weren't just pulling off this, the rocks would have to say something because your Messiah is coming into Jerusalem. God in flesh is coming in to be coronated King of the Jews. And you're going, well, what does that mean? He doesn't come in. No, he becomes a king of a new kingdom that he's been preaching of this whole time, that is not of this earth, that is for all mankind. But this process must take place. So what we have is that these Pharisees are telling the disciples, stop. The crowd's all looking, going, what's this commotion? What's going on? And honestly, what should have been this incredible moment where all of Israel stopped. There's a video. It's crazy. It's a video that plays in Israel. That plays about Israel today. Once a year, they blow a horn, and it goes for 1 minute that remembers the Holocaust. How many of you guys have seen this video? Some of you have. Look it up. It is crazy. Because what they do is they took a highway traffic cam, and it's just on the pole, and everyone's doing their thing, and this siren goes off, and I kid you, everyone stops, gets out of their cars, and I'm assuming this is happening at every shop and in every street and in every school, and they just stop for 1 minute while the siren just blares. The thing that's really interesting is in the video, there is an ambulance that's trying to get someone to where it needs to go. And the ambulance does not stop because life matters. The problem is because everyone has stopped and no one moving, this ambulance can only go so far. So for 1 minute, the ambulance just stops. But folks, all of Israel, this is Israel. Every city they do this stops. And what we have is the Messiah has come into Jerusalem, and everyone's just like, oh, what's going on? There's a commotion? Oh, what they're singing what? For what? What's going on? In Luke chapter 13, we read this. Nevertheless, I must go on my way today and tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet should perish away from Jerusalem. This is back to chapter 13. We're in chapter 19. Jesus goes, look, I've got to head towards Jerusalem because I'm not going to perish away from Jerusalem because Jerusalem's where you kill all your good prophets. It's really true. Watch this. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often I would have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Behold, your house is forsaken, and I tell you, you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. You're like, oh no, it just happened. We just listened to his disciples. No. Jerusalem is not saying, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. His disciples are. There will be a day, listen to me, in our future, where Jesus will come in, not on a donkey, on a steed, and will roll into Jerusalem. And trust me, all of Jerusalem is going to stop. All of Israel is going to stop, and they will say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Verse 41. And when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it. He wept over it. The Pharisees have run out before he gets into Jerusalem. He's coming down the Mount of Olives. They're telling him to stop, and he now sees, because when you get in the Mount of Olives, you can see the city, and he cries over the city. Because what should have been a coronation, what should have been a stopping, their Messiah has finally come, the thing that they've been waiting for. Listen, since Moses said that he would come, at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, it's here, and he is watching them just go on with their lives. Saying, would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. That is the heart of the Messiah coming into Jerusalem. That what's happening is he goes, oh, that you could have had peace, the peace that you've been longing for, but they are hidden from your eyes because your eyes are on the things of you, on the Messiah that you want. And I'm here. I am at your door. He's looking over Jerusalem. He can see the temple. For the days will come upon you when the enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you in on every side and tear you down to the ground, and you and your children within you, and they will not leave one stone upon one another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. No one was looking. No one was looking. And because of that, by the way, 70 AD, Rome will come in and destroy Jerusalem. Destroy it. One of the saddest things when you're in the city, and by the way, they rebuilt the walls, is that now they've dug down. Listen, they have dug down deep enough. They have found the walls of the rock, the boulders. You understand, these are gigantic, gigantic stones that were shoved off the top of the temple, and they hit with such force that they just caved themselves into the ground. They found those stones. What he prophesies happened. And Jesus is coming in going, I'm here. I'm your peace. But you can't see it. You can't see it. I'm trying to figure if I want to go this way. All of us have weird thoughts. Okay, I am not the only, maybe I am the only one. Have you ever had weird thoughts? You're thinking no one else is thinking this thought, but you're pretty sure someone might be thinking this thought, but you're ashamed to tell people you think this thought, so you don't tell anybody that you think this thought? Are you guys all with me on this thought? Okay. Like I've had this thought, like, I wonder when I get to heaven, I want to know like how close I came to like a gold vein in a rock. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if I would have kicked that one rock, I would have found the next big gold. Like I want to know how close I came to like, Jeff, if you would have just bought a lottery ticket that day, you would have won 250 million. I want to know like, how, do you ever have those thoughts? Like how close did I come to something? Like Was I ever in a bus with a spy from another country and just didn't know it? Like, those kind of weird, you know what I'm saying? Like if I would have just knocked that guy out, I could have saved didn't even, have you ever had those thoughts? I just want to get to heaven where God, repay my life. Like, okay, when did I come close to like something really, like, oh dude, you were right there. This was like a treasure, but you actually sold it on eBay for $5 and it was worth millions and you didn't even know. Like, I want to know that. I want to know that. Okay. Sorry, Steve wonders how I have a job, and you do too now. So here's where I'm coming. You're like, where's he going with this? Okay, so here's where I'm coming at with this. I feel that way with so many people who come and hear the story of Jesus, and we're so close to salvation, and they miss it. They're so close. Someone shared with them Jesus, but here's the problem. Their picture of Jesus didn't sound like what the Jesus that was shared with them, so they pass. Do you understand what I'm saying? They were so close. They were right there. They were right at this moment that they had all of eternity before them. They were so close, and yet the phone rang. Text came. All the games on. And I wonder so many times when I was in youth ministry, how many kids were so close to making that leap. But I got college plans. Had a kid of mine, love this kid. He's one of those kids, I want to hunt him down someday. Amazing heart, quiet kid, really quiet. And you have to understand, I was a little bit repulsive to quiet kids. I'm a little bit too much for them. Does that make sense? Quiet kids were like, Jeff, just stay away, right? But this kid and we would talk, and I remember when he came to me and we had this conversation. It's still probably in the top 5 heartbreaking conversations I ever had with a kid. He came to me, he goes, I believe everything you're saying. I believe Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I believe that he has a life for me. I believe that he died for me for eternity. But college is coming and I really want to party, so therefore I'm not going to accept him. He was so close. And I pray that someone has gotten and had another conversation with him. I hope he got to college and, Campus Crusade for Christ just crushed him. That's what I'm praying for. But we're so close. And that's what's so sad is I think Jesus has that feeling as he's looking over Israel saying, you're so close. But you're going to miss me. You're going to miss me. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. So here's what you need to understand. What should have happened is there should have been a line of where Jesus comes in. And by the way, I've walked through the gate that Jesus is supposed to take. It's an amazing experience to know that this is where he would have come. If he would have come down from the Mount of Olives, this is the gate that he would have taken. And they've actually marked on the ground these markings that kind of give you. And by the way, in that process, you're kind of like, okay, this is where he would have come. And in this moment, and the streets get narrower and narrower. And so you imagine 200 people that are trying to get ahead of him, and there's crowd, and the people are coming in, and you just kind of get this moment. And now there is a commotion, because there's no way there's not a commotion if you come in through that gate. But what should have happened is he should have made this circuitous kind of a track, and it would have taken him all the way down. And what should have happened is this: we bless you from the house of the Lord. There should have been an entourage waiting at his house to say, you're home. You're home. Surprise, right? We're here. That's what should have taken place, is this place, we bless you from the house of the Lord. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold stuff. Now, Another passage is this in Mark comes in that basically he just walks into the temple and no one's there. It is that feeling of like, this is where the surprise is going to, surprise party is going to happen. Woo-hoo! Didn't happen. It didn't happen. Now, Luke's account, and by the way, those of you that are new, let me explain. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all are coming from different perspectives. This shouldn't be odd to you. If you get 4 people in a room that tell you about an experience they had, let's say they go to the beach. One will be like, oh, the smell of the salt and the sun, the sunset over the water, right? Another person will be like, oh, I got sand in my suit and it was scratchy and it was hot, right? And the other person like, oh, I just couldn't. And you're like, did you all go to the same beach, right? There's a little bit of element that the fact is when you get to the Gospels, they're all looking at it from different perspectives. So they're looking at the same thing, but they're all doing something different. Luke bypasses all this and gets right down to it. He comes in and clears the temple. Does he do it on the day that he walks in? Possibly, most likely it was the second day. Because he comes to the temple and is blown away by what he sees. What does he see? Okay, temple. Huge place. Oh my gosh, huge place. But it's like the rings of a tree. Outer rings. In the outer court, that is where, by the way, everybody could come. Those that were seeking God, looking for God. By the way, Gentiles could come into the outer ring. Then there was this next ring where the women could go that were Jews. And then there was an inner ring where the men could go. And then there was a final ring where only the priests could go. The problem is in the outer ring, the Jews could not care less about the Gentiles or anybody else who didn't have the right to get into the inner rings. Does that make sense? We're in. We can go to the inner ring. You can't go to the inner ring. And so we could care less what happens in your area. So what did they do? They set up shop. What do they mean they set up shop? It's called money changing. Oh, I'm sorry. Your money that you brought from wherever, it doesn't apply here. We have temple money. Oh, that dollar in temple money will only get you 10 cents in temple money. So give me your dollar. I'll give you 10 cents in temple money. But you're going to have to pay your tithes. So what they're doing is they're just ripping people off. They're called money changers. Money changers. It was a scam. Complete, utter scam. Because believe me, the dollar that they just were given was spelt just fine in the city of Jerusalem. Does that make sense? Well, the temple, you got to have temple money. Oh, you brought your sheep? Oh, let me look at it. Oh, I think I see a blemish here. By the way, if you really want to have a sacrifice, what you need to do is buy one of our holy, blessed, coveted sheep. We did the undercoating on this one. We put new tires on this one. This one's the special one. You're going to want to get this one. And then what they would do is that they would exchange you, oh, by the way, for an exchange fee. And then they would take your sheep, and as soon as you walked away, they went, oh, now this is a holy sheep. Do you see how the process is going on? And they're selling junk. I will say one thing for the Arabs that have control of the Temple Mount this day. Nothing happens there. At least they're keeping it at least a holy and sacred site. Does that make sense? To them. But you walk on there, and as you walk in, you just kind of get this idea that you just have the smell of animal dung, and you get all this stuff. And Jesus walks in and goes, and he entered the temple, began to drive out those who sold. I want you to see this. Now, one of the things you need to understand is that Jesus is fulfilling prophecy. By the way, he has fulfilled more prophecy in the last probably 2 hours since he got the colt than you can ever imagine. This is what it says in Psalm 69:9. For zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproach of those who reproach have fallen on me. What is the reproach of those who reproach? Those who are sinning against their brother. Their reproach is a reproach to me. This is a picture of Jesus coming in and cleansing the temple. For zeal for your house has consumed me. And Jesus loses his mind. Why? Here's what you need to grasp. Because none of this garbage was happening in the inner circle. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was happening in the place where the common people got to come see God. And it's really hard to have a worship experience when you're sitting next to a goat pen or a sheep pen. There wouldn't have been goats there. Sheep pen. Or you're hearing guys doing money exchanging as you're trying to worship God. Are you with me? And this is what he says. Saying to them, it is written, my house shall be a house of prayer. And you made it a den of robbers. This is my house. This is my space. And you came in and you made it where you could care less. All you want to do is fleece all of these people that were making pilgrimages to the temple, and you're taking their money and you're extorting them. And by the way, the system worked really well for the priests. Priests were making money hand over fist. And Jesus clears the temple. So, we have this in Matthew 21:10. And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, who is this? The triumphal entry ends on such a downbeat. It's sad. These disciples are doing their best to give him the best entry. I mean, they're just putting their cloaks out before him, and they're getting palm branches, and they're saying, look, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And when they get to the temple, and I'm sure there's a part of him that goes, oh, when we get to the temple, it's going to be awesome. And he walks in to see all of that. No one is standing out there waiting for him to walk up the steps. No one is there singing out his joy, rejoicing over him. All he hears is sheep pens and guys saying, come on over here, buy my stuff. Come on over here. Come on, it's all right, it's stuff. And he's going, no, And with righteous anger, he begins to drive them out. The triumphal entry is supposed to be this amazing moment. And what it does is it underlines boldly with double lines the fact that there's a God who comes, has to set up his own party. Hey, go in there, find a colt, untie it, tell the guy it's for me. He is making this up because Israel is not ready for him. So why? Why is this important for us? It's important for us because here's the question that we have to ask. Is your heart ready? Is the Jesus that you have not the Jesus that he really is, but it's the Jesus you want him to be? And when Jesus comes in, are you standing there going, hey, I can't wait for you. I'm excited for you. Or you're the one that's doing business. And Jesus goes, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm here. You are so close to peace. You are so close to salvation. You are so close. And yet when you do, listen to me, but because of your choice, destruction is waiting for you. Listen to me. For those who do not find Jesus, destruction is waiting for them. And I believe that Jesus cries over them the way he cries over Israel. Oh, that you would just come to me, that you would just come to me and that I would protect you. But you have your own way and you want to do your own thing and you have your agenda. And because of that, I am sorry for the destruction. And he cries over you. And isn't it sad? This begins the last week. Not with triumphal entry. I mean, I'm sure he praised his disciples. Good job, guys. But it begins with this crowd who says, who is this? Oh, it's this carpenter guy from Nazareth. He's been saying he's been healing people. He's been traveling around with all these fishermen and tax collectors and prostitutes. Because at the end of the week, that same crowd's going to yell, crucify him, crucify him. Folks, you're so close to salvation. You're so close to peace. But you will miss it if your eye is on a different God, and you will miss it if you are too busy to know that he's coming to town. And I don't think I can say it any better than that. So I'm going to pray. Father, I would ask that we would not miss you, that we would not miss that you are here, that you are in the presence of the hearts of those of people around them. And Father, would you give us a burning desire to take you into the world in which we live, that you would take us, Father, to places where people don't know you. And Father, we would pray that they wouldn't miss it. We would pray that they would understand that the treasure in the field is right next to them. Father, I would ask that we would see you high and lifted up. High and lifted up. Because it's in seeing you on the cross that we understand how much we had to pay, or you had to pay for us to be near you. Be with us as we journey through your last week. Be with us as we see what you did in these days. And may we be men and women who trust you and are saved from destruction. In Jesus' name, amen.